In today's technological world, traveling abroad and smartphone use go hand in hand. But what if, like many of us, you're unsure, intimidated, or just downright confused when it comes to setting up your smartphone or using it abroad? Today, we're going to hear from somebody who's been helping travelers for a long time when it comes to using their smartphones and so much more as far as traveling, working abroad, or just setting it up properly for that big trip. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to best prep your smartphone for travel abroad. We're going to talk about some of the most common mistakes that people make when it comes to setting up their smartphone or using their data abroad. And we're going to go over some essential apps and tips for travel before you head abroad with your smartphone. So let's get into it. Welcome to Track Us Down. I'm Doug. On this channel, we talk about retiring early, moving abroad, but mostly living a better second half of life. After over 25 years of working hard and raising our family, my wife Monique and I retired early at the age of 50, and we moved here to the beautiful island of Madeira, Portugal to make our base in our second half of life. A second half of life could be some kind of transformational event that happened in your life, but I guarantee you, whatever you're doing in your first half of life, your second half of life, you're going to have your smartphone with you. And if you're traveling abroad, you're going to want to make sure that that's set up as best as it can be for you so that you don't have any of those pitfalls that we're going to talk about. Today, we have Michelle, who along with her husband, Jedd, have been pursuing a path and a vision of an intentional and transformational travel and working abroad for well over a decade. They have an exciting and meaningful digital nomad sort of lifestyle, living, working, traveling abroad. They've picked up a lot of tips and tricks and knowledge along the way, and they're eager to share that with others who are looking to do the same thing, especially when it comes to smartphones and so much more. So welcome to Michelle.
Thanks, Doug. Happy to be here.
Great. So I know today we're going to talk about smartphone travel, but I know you have so much more to offer as far as what you and Jedd have been doing for over a decade now. Maybe you could just tell us a bit about you and Jedd and what you guys have been up to and what has kind of led to where you are today and the knowledge that you've accumulated.
My husband and I have been digital nomads since 2014, and we have a part-time home base in Oregon. So we're on the west coast of the US where I grew up. And I think it all started because after getting married and starting our careers, I had a little bit of a quarter-life crisis, wanted to live abroad, and decided to do a sabbatical, so to speak, so that we could try living abroad. We ended up becoming U.S. Peace Corps volunteers. We were placed in rural Jamaica to volunteer for 27 months, and we loved that cultural immersion, the cross-cultural exchange. So instead of going back to our traditional jobs afterwards, we tried out freelancing and working online so that we could travel and live in other countries. And at that time, I started our travel blog on the side, which is Intentional Travelers.
Nice. And so that is your first half of life, your first quarter of life. And that's exactly what I was talking about before, where these type of things can happen at any point in one's life. And you're doing something so meaningful and purposeful. And I'll bet it wasn't always with a smartphone.
That's true. I am old enough to remember life before the internet. And I did become an adult, got married, did all those things, did the Peace Corps before I owned a smartphone.
So I too remember a time before any kind of a smartphone. And indeed, when we took a year off when our boys were 7 and 10 and we traveled around the world, we had no technology with us. I mean, I wish we would have had something to help us along the way, but we made do with maps, German maps. As we traveled through Greece, we couldn't read the roadsides, we couldn't read the map, but somehow we made our way. Of course, it would have been so much easier with a smartphone and with the maps that come along with it and all the other apps and everything as well. So why is it so important, especially in today's world, to have some savvy, some knowledge when it comes to setting up your smartphone and smartphone usage when you're traveling or working abroad?
Sure. And I want to say, I think sometimes people who are already in the second half of life maybe have a leg up because they do have those analog skills as well. It helps to have both. So I would say even just a couple years ago, you could get by much easier without using your phone very much traveling abroad, but they are becoming increasingly essential. For example, some airlines and airports have actually done away with the paper plane tickets completely, so they only accept digital confirmations. And we all know that there are pros and cons to technology. So I definitely want to caveat that we're not advocating to spend more time glued to our devices, but they are such an incredible tool. And if we can use them wisely, we can make the most of that power that's in our pockets or in our hands, reap the benefits without it kind of getting the better of us or getting flustered and frustrated.
Couldn't agree with you more, and it's something that you said before here about how, our generation, or at least mine, Generation X, we did have those analog skills and we were able to cross over somewhat. We're still working on it into the digital age. I mean, it was, I guess, our generation that crossed that transformational line. So we were able to use maps, and now we're working on keeping up with this technology so that we can use our smartphones, not stay glued to it, like you said, but there are so many ways that it is so important for travel. But what about the other generations, people who are the generation before us? How are they coping, and what have you seen?
Yeah, so from my experience, a lot of people feel like they are barely keeping their head above water with technology because things do change very quickly. There's a lot of new things. Some people even try to ignore it because it just feels overwhelming to learn. And I have heard from a lot of friends of ours who felt like they were missing out on things when they traveled because there was so much going on and online resources or data plans to figure out that were foreign to them. So I did start putting together a toolkit of online tutorials for travelers to kind of help with this. And I would say you don't need to learn it all at once. Any little bit that you are able to kind of level up is going to help you immensely to travel smoother, stay safe. There's all these benefits to just kind of taking maybe what you already do at home to the next level, kind of leveling up a little bit.
So that's something that you and Jedd offer on your website, intentionaltravelers.com, are some courses as well to help people with things like their smartphone usage, setting it up properly, going abroad?
Exactly. And we have also a free checklist of like some steps that you can do before your trip.
I think that would be so useful for many of our viewers and for many of our listeners. What are some of the ways that a smartphone is replacing kind of old technology, the analog technology such as paper tickets? What are some of the ways that a smartphone is replacing that when you travel abroad?
Yeah, some of the things that we use smartphones for are communicating with our accommodation hosts or tour guides. Recently, we were in Hong Kong trying to get to a food tour, and the point that they had told us to meet the guide, the place was closed and we couldn't find it. So we needed in real time to be able to contact someone internationally. So making sure that your phone is connected is helpful for that. If we're using our credit card to purchase a train ticket that leaves very soon and it triggers a fraud detection, we need to either be able to contact our credit card company or they might be calling us. We need to be able to respond or check our email so that we can keep using our credit card, receive confirmation codes when we're logging into online accounts because they don't recognize our new location. The maps, which we talked about, right? Navigating through unfamiliar cities, translating menu items and instructions. So you don't need to hire a translator. You can have that ability from your phone. And contacting loved ones in case of an emergency or just generally staying in touch, sharing photos. If you think about it, the internet is the biggest library in the world and you have that at your fingertips, so why not use it? The ideal is everywhere that we go, if we're not familiar with it, it'd be nice to have a local friend there who could, pick us up as soon as we get to the airport and translate everything for us and tell us exactly what to do and where to eat. But most of us as independent travelers, even those of us who have been traveling a lot, arriving in a new destination, unfamiliar place can be very stressful because you don't know what you don't know. And so it really is a tool to help you in the moment when there's those unanticipated questions that pop up or bumps in the road that inevitably happen when you travel.
I think those are some fantastic points and very powerful points. I'd like to dig into a couple of them just a little bit more because, like you said, whether a paper boarding pass versus one on your phone, that's just really the tip of the iceberg. It's so much more than that. When you get to your destination and it's the middle of the night, being able to pull up a map and see where you are in relation to the airport and where you need to go. The translate function on the phone where you can just point at it with your camera and it can translate signs and instructions and directions is so important.
Yeah, the most recent example that I can think of, we were going to Manila for the first time. We'd never been to the Philippines, so it was completely foreign. We weren't even sure like how much English we would be able to use with people or on the signs. And fortunately, there is quite a bit of English, but I had done research for getting from the airport to our hotel, and there was this direct bus, just like an airport transfer bus that we were planning to use. But as soon as we got there, the bus had broken down, and so it wasn't running that day. So all of a sudden, we need to figure out how to get to our place in a safe way that's not going to cost an arm and a leg. And so I can pull out my phone and look on the map, see, public transportation. They do have a metro, but it doesn't go to the airport, and it's a mile to walk there in 100-degree weather, which we're not going to do. And so then I search, is the rideshare available to this airport? And it was. And there's all these questions that start coming up, like, should you tip the driver? Those kind of things that you maybe don't anticipate. And it's really helpful to be able to figure them out right away because you have your phone.
And so right off the hop, this is a very powerful tool. You have your boarding pass, you have your guidebook, you have your translation, you have your accommodation bookings, you have the ability to make a phone call to a hotel if you need to, send an email, directions, everything within that one little package. I mean, we couldn't even have dreamed of that back when we were younger. And I think the generations coming up, I just think that it's so important for them as well in an ever increasingly chaotic and confusing world sometimes, especially technologically.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have a fear of technology, and I don't blame them for that because if you don't grow up with something, it is a lot harder. But if you think about, it's just one level up, as we're talking about. It's just taking it one step further than maybe you are using your phone at home.
Right. And the last thing I guess that would be so important is just safety and, like you said, keeping in touch with loved ones. Whether you're using an iPhone or an Android phone, they all have cameras. They all do some form of streaming, whether it's FaceTime or Zoom. And the ability to be somewhere, whether it's the Philippines or anywhere like that, and just FaceTime with your parents, with your brother or sister, your loved one, with your kids, and feel like they're right there and be able to talk to them and see them and show them where you are. I think that is huge when it comes to where technology's at, traveling or working abroad nowadays.
Yeah, and the element of safety where the more that you know or feel confident in where you are and where you're going and what you're doing, that keeps you safe because you're not as vulnerable, right, to kind of crimes of opportunity where if you look lost, you're not able to pay attention to where you are more vulnerable. So the phone, if you can kind of step aside when you're out and about, figure out where you're going, and then be confident about which direction you're heading, that keeps you safe as well.
Definitely. So a couple other things that are very important to talk about, I think, are how to prep your smartphone before you travel, as well as some common mistakes that people make when traveling abroad. As far as prepping, what do you think you would start with first? How do you guys start off before you go?
So number one, you want to stay connected and be able to use your phone, right? The worst thing would be to not have it when you need it. And some of us have learned the hard way. Making a 2-minute phone call outside of the country can end up with a really high phone bill. So that's one thing. I see a lot of travelers making a mistake by maybe defaulting to using their home carrier's international add-on plan, which isn't bad. I get that it's convenient, but it is usually among the worst values for overseas travel. So if you're traveling a lot, the costs really do add up. So depending on your phone, whether it's unlocked and your data needs, it's important to know that you do have other options. We've tried a lot of them over the years. You probably have too. We almost exclusively use eSIMs, so that's a really affordable option.
We love eSIMs, and I can tell you that, whenever we travel back to North America or anywhere outside of Europe, we use an eSIM now. Having that dual SIM in a phone is a game changer, I think. Some people still they travel abroad, they go to an airport and they snap out their SIM card and put a new one in, you go through a setup. But I find it so much easier through something like Airello or others, where you can just download an eSIM as a second SIM and just go through the easy step-by-step setup connections, and it almost connects for you as you land or shortly after you land. And they're really not that expensive, are they?
Yeah, it's a great deal. We pay usually like under $20 for a whole month worth of data compared to a lot of these international plans are $10, $12 a day.
Right. That's a huge difference. So if you're using your own home carrier, I would say try and avoid that at all costs. I'm sure you'd agree with me. Don't use that $10 or $7, $10, $15 a day additional international add-on plan because, in a 2-week trip or a 1-month trip, your costs are going to be through the roof where you could just simply download a second SIM, an eSIM, and you shut off your roaming for your main one, turn it on for your eSIM, and you're good to go for the 2 weeks or a month, whatever you need.
Airalo has been a good option for us. We've enjoyed their regional plans. So when we go to Vietnam, we can also hop over to Hong Kong and Manila like we did, and it's actually covered in the same region.
That's something, once I learned how to use that, I couldn't believe I never knew this before. But I think some of the generations, the generation above me or beyond that, I think maybe they get a little bit confused as to what an eSIM is. Do you cover that in your course as well?
Yeah, I do. I have a worldwide connectivity course, and so I go through all the different options. So based on whether you have your phone unlocked and if your phone is new enough for an eSIM, which most of them are by now, it's been around for quite a while. And then we have kind of step-by-step and best practices for how to use it and get it working for you.
Do you have any preference or have you noticed any difference between, say, the two big ones, Android and Apple?
No, I've been asked if there's one that's easier to travel with or works better. I think it's really personal preference.
That's really good to know because it's good for people to know that if they want to get an eSIM, that they're not limited by the type of phone they have. Generally, if they have a newer phone in the last couple of years, it's going to have an eSIM as well.
Exactly.
What are some of the common mistakes that people make when they travel abroad as far as with their smartphones beyond over usage of data or including the usage of data? Maybe keeping their roaming on would be one of them.
Yeah, so managing battery life and connectivity are two things that people might not be used to thinking about as much at home because a lot of people, they don't even know how much data they'll actually need abroad because you might have unlimited data on your cell phone plan at home. So knowing how to manage that phone data is going to save you a lot of money and headaches. For example, know which apps use up data quickly, which settings you can adjust on your phone so that you don't run out of data in an inopportune moment or just have to pay for, continuously upgrading because you maxed out your plans. Along with that, when you're out and about all day, you're navigating unfamiliar places, you're taking pictures, so you're probably using your phone a lot more than you do at home. So it's important to have a plan for keeping the battery charged.
Exactly.
We've seen so many travelers who are just oh my gosh, I ran out of charge and I'm not at the hotel to do that. So we always use a battery pack. It'll charge up your phone a few times a day and it's basically the same size as the phone. So it's pretty easy to carry around.
And you can get those pretty much anywhere. You can order them off Amazon. You can go down to your local electronics store and ask somebody there, and they'll set you up with something that's good for travel. You use it during the day, like you said, and then you just recharge it overnight in the hotel room, and you're good to go because you're right. You're going to be using your phone so much for photos, and maps drains it a lot. And maybe you have the extra brightness on, and for whatever other kind of apps you're using, you're going to need something like that for sure as an extra battery pack.
So one more mistake is just not using the phone as a tool to its fullest potential. So remember, you have the power of the World Wide Web at your fingertips. So the phone gives me a lot more confidence that I can tackle any random issue because as we talked about, inevitably when you're traveling, there are those questions and bumps in the road that you can't anticipate. And it opens doors, it helps me find hidden gems, even in places that I've never been before. I use Google Maps a ton when I'm trip planning, or it helps me connect with locals even when I don't speak the language. So having your phone connected to the internet and making sure that you're not paying that arm and a leg for it is going to help you tackle those issues or answer questions in real time that you can't plan for.
I agree. And there's so many usages that are, just like you said, at your fingertips. There's also some cautions I think you should have before you go and trusting too much maybe in this technology as well. Our son, a couple of years ago, he was traveling through Turkey. He got off the bus and he was following a path on Google Maps. He got himself in a little bit of trouble because he was following Google Maps and it looked like a short distance from where he was to the hostel he was going to. And it turns out in real life, it wasn't. It got him down into kind of like a pretty sketchy kind of area where there was packs of dogs around and it was getting dark. It could have been pretty bad, pretty fast. And luckily, a local came out of their house and invited him in, made him tea, and called the police for him and were able to come and get him somewhere else. What do you think of that? And what's your experience with that?
Yeah, it's hard to be able to anticipate where those dogs are going to be. So that's definitely something where I recommend kind of researching the neighborhood, just getting from place to place, because you never really know if somewhere is actually walkable or looks safe or sketchy until you're actually there. I do use Google Maps, not on the phone, but when I'm doing my research, we have this Google Maps Street View in most locations where you can kind of check it out beforehand. That is another helpful thing to do.
I guess the main takeaway there is use that technology as far as the maps and things like that, but also be aware of your surroundings and just use common sense and don't put all your eggs in that basket.
Of course, yeah.
What are some easy ways and some best practices as far as preparing your smartphone before you leave and before you travel or work abroad?
So even though you might use your smartphone every day at home, there are some different things that you'll want to do when you're going abroad or to an unfamiliar destination. So we can talk more about the apps I recommend. I do have a checklist of 12 things to do with your phone before a trip, which is a resource from one of my courses. I'm happy to share a link that your followers can get their own copy. But some highlights from that checklist is setting up your SIM card and data plan in advance. So we talked about the importance of that. I definitely do it ahead of time because you need a good Wi-Fi connection to set up the eSIM. It allows you to kind of have it working as soon as you show up and not have to stress about that when the airport Wi-Fi might not be that great or, you're trying to figure out other things. There's that. I also download offline map data for the places that I'm visiting. So even if you get disconnected or you don't have a good signal, in places like Europe where the walls are really thick, that actually affects your connection. And so if you have this map data already downloaded to your phone, you're able to see the streets and the map points. You don't have all the functions of Google Maps when you're offline, but you're able to see a lot of that, and you can see your location because the GPS always works no matter what. Like that blue dot on the map, you're always going to see that. And it's just a matter of whether the phone is able to fill in the map data or not. So if you've downloaded this offline map data, it really helps for that. It also saves you on using up a lot of data when you are out and about.
I think that is a great hack and a great tip. So before you go and you're researching your trip on Google Maps, you can actually download offline the areas that you're going to be so that when you get to your destination, if you do have a problem with your connection, even through your SIM or through Wi-Fi, it's not going to be just spinning. You're going to see a map and a blue dot with you on it, which will at least give you a starting point.
Google Translate also has offline options to download language packs, they call it. You can use that app as well to translate things, even if you have some connection issues. Then I like to screenshot important confirmations. I have a picture of my passport. I keep a picture on my phone just in case. So having those kind of important documents saved to an album offline, so just in case, or like even when you're on the plane, you can't use your phone necessarily, but you could pull up your pictures and fill out whatever forms you need to do for customs on the plane.
That's another great point. I know we use files with the iOS, and we have our passports. If there's a visa that we need, any kind of document, birth certificate, those kind of things locked away and safe so that if we have to bring it up and show an official, we have it. I mean, the phone it can hold everything of importance right there with you.
Yeah. And then adjust your data usage settings so your phone doesn't use up data unless you really need it. So this goes back to knowing which apps you really need when you're out and about and which ones are also using up a lot of data. So if you think about a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? If you're sending a text message, that's using very little data. If you're sending a picture, that's using quite a bit more data. And if you're sending a video is like thousands of pictures. So that's a lot more data. So that's an easy way to think about your data usage, but making sure before your trip to adjust those settings. And that's something that we walk people through in our courses. So if anyone needs help with that, we do have more resources.
Well, you know what? This course sounds like it is so robust with the not only information that you're providing and going through step by step, but also the checklist that you have, I think would be such an essential thing to have as the time is approaching for you to leave on your trip, and just to go along and check off and make sure you've done all kind of the things that the experts do, the people with the experience who have been doing it for a while, and feel more confident going about it. Again, especially for people who are not as technologically confident as others, and you're maybe using your smartphone for the first time and setting it up with an eSIM. I think that's a great service that you guys are offering. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is important for our viewers and our listeners?
Let's talk about some essential apps for travelers. So there are obviously a million apps and a lot of them are great, but I know when people do get overwhelmed trying to keep up with everything, something that I teach is to start by getting familiar with these 4 essential apps for international travel, so that if you don't do anything else, these 4 are going to make the biggest difference in your ease of travel and safety and enjoyment. The first one is Google Maps, which, as I mentioned, I actually use for travel planning as much as I do for navigating around. Then Google Translate if you're going to somewhere with a foreign language. So this app can translate signs in real time, menus, as well as the audio of live conversations. I mean, it's not always perfect, but it's better than nothing. So when we have like a homestay host in Vietnam actually use this more than anyone we've ever met. So they had no English, but they are just talking into their phone, greeting us in Vietnamese, and they either show us or they can kind of press play and it'll speak in English and then point to us to use their phone, and we just respond to it. And we're just going back and forth so we can actually connect with people and have a better sense of what's going on, even though there's this language barrier.
That's amazing. So it's almost in real time when you're using that Translate app, especially if you have good connection and you can use it as that kind of an ongoing translate talk thing. There's just a bit of lag between, it's not that constant typing it in and showing or writing it out. To be able to talk and have it translated or spoken, that's pretty amazing and makes for a much more meaningful and timely conversation, I guess.
Yeah, even with people who do speak English, you want to approach that sensitively. Like our friends who are still learning and we don't know their language, it can help with vocabulary.
Right.
It also can translate signs with the camera of your phone. So if we were trying to park somewhere and there's a sign in a foreign language, we're like, that could be telling us it's not okay to park here. So we better figure out what it says.
Well, that's great. So you have Google Maps, which is huge. I love the offline feature. And you have Translate, which I love the part where you can just talk. What are the other 2 apps you wanted to talk about?
I recommend setting up and getting familiar with WhatsApp. So if folks aren't familiar, that's a messaging app. It doesn't require cell service. And it's used very globally, Asia, Europe, Latin America, pretty much everywhere we've gone. So that's how we send messages, photos, do video calls with our friends and family when we travel. It's also how we contact a lot of businesses, accommodation hosts will use it, tour guide in all these different continents. So if that's not something that you've used before, I highly recommend getting familiar with WhatsApp.
So what do you mean it doesn't require a cell phone connection or a data connection?
It does require either Wi-Fi or data, but not a cell phone. So it's not using your home carrier, but it can use your home phone number. I know that's a little confusing, but it allows us to not actually have to use a cell plan, but only data when we go abroad. eSIM or Wi-Fi from your accommodations. So it can save you a lot of money.
So another thing I've noticed with WhatsApp, and this is a great app, and this is a great tip that you're giving here, it seems to be also kind of a universal bridge between the different operating systems. If both people don't have iOS and you can't iMessage between the two,
right?
And somebody has Android, everybody uses WhatsApp, and then you can easily create a group chat or connect with your host or connect with your tour guide or connect with anybody, and it kind of bridges that gap between the iOS, Android, and beyond.
Yeah, it's very globally used, so I highly recommend it.
Yeah, probably not as many people use it as they should when they're traveling abroad. We've met several people here on Madeira who have come over from, especially North America, and they haven't bothered to set up their WhatsApp. They're not sure of it, or maybe they're a little suspicious. I think hearing it from somebody like you who have used it so much and who has traveled a lot, I think it's going to be a game changer for them.
Yes, definitely.
And number 4.
Yeah, lastly, I recommend getting familiar with whatever rideshare or ride-hailing app is common in the region that you're going to. When you're in a foreign place and you don't know your way around, it's actually easy to get taken advantage of or just to have a miscommunication with a taxi driver. So using a rideshare app and knowing the best practices can make travel both safer and smoother.
And there's so many different rideshare everywhere. Every other country has their own version of a rideshare, even just a taxi app. I'm sure you've seen many of them.
Yeah, there are different ones, but once you know the best practices, there are a lot of similarities. So for example, we like to set up our credit card to make payments so that we're not having to deal with cash, especially in places like Vietnam. It's 25,000 dong to $1. And so people who are used to adjusting that currency in their head, it's easy, when you're at the airport to get taken advantage of because, you only gave me 50,000 and it should have been 500,000. So with the credit card, you know before you even get in the car what the estimated cost is going to be. You can follow along so you make sure that they're not, taking you the long route to rack up the meter, and then it's going to be able to pay them straight out of your payment process. It's best to use a VPN for your own protection. If you're on a private network, like it's just the Airbnb, maybe it's not quite as high of a risk. If you're on your own data plan, also, you probably might not need a VPN. And then people also use VPNs just to, get the Netflix shows that are actually from the US while you're abroad or something like that.
Still have to watch Netflix when you're traveling abroad, right? In that hotel room. Yeah. You're right. And a lot of people think of a VPN maybe just to allow them to connect to organizations maybe from their home country, and it allows them to do that. But it's also is for protection. If you are connected to public Wi-Fi, I say at a cafe or something like that, it's an extra level of protection to make sure that maybe somebody's not going to be able to hack into what you're doing, sitting a table over from you and take your personal data and, create an identity theft, which would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Michelle, we've talked a lot today about cell phones and what a powerful tool, and not just cell phones, smartphones. We have to call them smartphones because it's not just a cell phone anymore. It is a powerful travel tool in your hand that you've had so much experience with that you've used in all kinds of countries around the world. Your site, intentionaltravelers.com, is so much more than that. You have the course on smartphones. What are the other things that you can offer to people who come to your site?
Yeah, we have kind of a toolkit that we're building out with courses about connectivity, as we discussed. I also have one on my Google Maps travel hacks, so trip planning for places that you've never been to before. We have Book Better Flights, so kind of my flight research roadmap to help you find those deals and make sure that you're getting the best flight options that you can. And then I have one on accommodations. So there's a lot of resources basically helping folks use the internet and smartphones to make sure that they're not missing out on better travel experiences and deals.
Well, I think that is a very important topic. It's a very timely topic in today's technological world. And let's face it, everybody, our generation, the generations above us, the older generations, they all have smartphones with them and with us when we travel. So it's very important to learn these tips so that you don't encounter some of these pitfalls, or if you do, you're better able to deal with them. So thank you so much for joining us today as a guest. And I know that our viewers and our listeners are going to get so much value from what they hear here today, as well as from your site. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For our listeners and our viewers, we're going to put a link down below for Michelle Jedd's pre-travel phone checklist. I'm sure you'll find it very valuable, as well as a link to their website. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I hope that you've learned some important tips that will help you travel better. And as always, check back in and track us down.